And there we go. And here, you've done a wonderful job. And now I will share my screen and I won't press any other buttons. All right. So we've been through that. We were talking about the overlap zone here and why we've got level 3 and 4 with the same colours and the same numbers, and how we can categorise both foods and liquids and non-standard things like liquid medicine or gravy and soup and other condiments. Just as a reminder as well that patients will always require a prescription for both food and drink, and they do that based on clinical advice. So just because someone requires pureed food does not mean that they need extremely thick liquids, and similarly if they're having moderately thick drinks, they don't necessarily need liquidised all foods to be liquidised either. So they might need their soups to be liquidised, but they may also be able to have minced and moist foods, for example. So that's one of the ways that the framework just needs to be looked at as well there. Okay, so just a reminder then that one of the benefits of the IDDSI framework is this concept of objective measurement at the point of service. So the tests are designed so that they can be simple to use, quick and portable, but also reliable. And in the last webinar, we talked particularly about the IDDSI Flow Test, and today we'll be talking about the fork test and also the spoon tilt test. We also had a look at this one last time, so this is just a reminder then comparing the national descriptors, the Australian national descriptors, where we were predominantly using flow off a spoon really, to the IDDSI Flow Test. We will talk more about the descriptive side of things with the national descriptors, because there is some elements of the Australian descriptors that are retained within the IDDSI framework. So just a reminder again that the flow test is used for liquids. If you have something that already looks thick, like a mousse or a pudding, please don't put it in the syringe. There's no point, it won't flow. So that's probably just one thing to remember. So we're starting at the very top of the drinks here, looking at moderately thick. And just as a reminder here, those moderately thick liquids are used if thin liquids, so water, milk or other things, tea and coffee, or level 1 slightly thick drinks or level 2 mildly thick drinks flow too quickly to be swallowed safely. So this thickness level could be taken from a cup or taken with a spoon. It needs some effort to drink this thickness using a wide diameter straw. So you would have 8 to 10 mils remaining after 10 seconds of flow. This is the video showing the IDDSI flow test. So we've got 10 mils of liquid in the flow test. The liquid's flowing. After 10 seconds of flow, we stop and there's less than 10 mils remaining, between 8 and 10 mils remaining in there to give us a moderately thick or liquidised liquid. So this comes from the framework then, looking at the descriptions and the physiologic rationale. So we can drink it from a cup. You'll need some effort to take it through a standard ball straw or a wide straw. We can't pipe it, layer it or mould it on a plate. We can't eat it with a fork because it'll drip slowly and dollops through the prongs. But you can eat it with a spoon like a soup, for example. We don't need any oral processing or chewing, and it should be a smooth texture with no bits, lumps, fibres, bits of shells, skin, husks, particle, bristles or bone in there. Some of those more detailed things have a bit more relevance as we come to look at the IDDSI flow test as well. So again, if we've got poor tongue control that's not sufficient to manage mildly thick drinks or slightly thick drinks, that's when you might be moving to this moderately thick level. Our extremely thick or pureed food, so the descriptors there, no lumps, doesn't require chewing, not sticky, holds its shape on a spoon and it'll fall off in a single spoonful when tilted, holding its shape on the plate with a little bit of slumping or slow spreading. Just looking at the image, you can see that there's a nice mound on top of the fork, and you might find that there's a little tiny bit of a tail below the fork, but it certainly shouldn't dollop or flow or drip continuously through the prongs of the fork. And again, if we look at the descriptive characteristics from the framework here, you'd usually eat this with a spoon, but you can also eat it with a fork because it's not going to drip through. You're not going to take it through a straw or a cup. You don't need chewing. This type of texture can be piped or layered or moulded, and it'll show some slow movement under gravity, but is difficult to pour. It doesn't have lumps and it's not sticky. And importantly, if it's a food item, if there is a liquid, it shouldn't have any liquid seeping out of it either or separating from it. So for this type of texture, we need, often the person has a lot of difficulty with tongue control. So you shouldn't need to bite or chew this food. It shouldn't be too sticky because we know that's a choking risk. If the food does require chewing or controlled manipulation, then it's not suitable. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that is later on. So as you've probably guessed by now, we do have a what we call a ceiling effect with the IDDSI Flow Test. And that means that where we had hoped when we initially put the framework out that we would be able to use the syringe to categorise from 0 all the way through to level 4, what we found is that if you've got 1 to 2 drips coming out of the syringe after 10 seconds of flow, or if it's sitting at 10 mils of flow, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a puree. So it means that we need to do some additional testing. So the critical elements of the puree then are that it holds its shape on a spoon, that you can eat it with a fork because it doesn't fall through the fork or collapse over the sides of the fork, and it shouldn't need chewing. So within the testing methods document, we've got a couple of pictures to also help there. So with a level 3, a liquidized or moderately thick, you can see just a very small tiny mound above the fork, and you can see it dripping slowly in dollops or strands through the tines of the fork. The extremely thick liquid, on the other hand, we've got a big mound above the fork and just a small tail below the fork. One of the questions that we're often asked is how reliable the fork test is. So I have looked for some information there for you on that. And we have a publication coming out soon that will describe this in more detail as well. Basically, the fork test is reliable, but it has a couple of caveats. So we need very good descriptions and pictures. We also need a small number of categories to try and assign the thickness levels to. So I've got 2 publications to share with you to show you how that's demonstrated. So Hattie et al., and it's actually a 2016 publication, provided clinicians and laypersons about 15 different thickened drinks, and they asked them to categorise them into 7 thickness levels, which is quite difficult. You know, when you're looking across at various, so these were Australian thickened liquids. The clinicians and the laypersons were well able to categorise anything at the very thin end, so where those dark blue bars are, and they were quite accurate, and also at the other end where the pale blue lines are indicating greater than 900. The things in the middle were not quite as consistent. It was more difficult. So those middle levels of thickness were difficult to categorise because there were so many different buckets to try and categorise them into. When we look at the Park et al. Paper in 2017, again, they had clinicians and laypersons, and they asked people to categorise into just 3 thickness levels using images. Now, the Hattie et al. One also used images, so the Australian iconic poster. The clinicians curiously didn't use the images at all, but the laypersons did, and the laypersons, their categorisation matched the pictures quite well. With the Park et al. One, as I say, they gave 3 pictures here, and they found that for clinicians there was perfect agreement. For lay peoples, we're looking at 0.992, so also very, very good agreement there. So the key to this is the fewer the categories you need to categorise it as, and some very clear descriptions. So IDDSI asks you to categorise just into 2. and that is it either drips slowly in dollops or strands through the slots of a fork at this thickness level, or it holds above the fork. Anything thinner, so anything from 0 through to level 3 should be assessed using the IDDSI Flow Test. Just going to ask, if you've currently got your microphone on, can I ask you to mute it, please? We're getting just a little bit of feedback here. And we can unmute it at the end of the presentation. So for liquidized and moderately thick liquids then, the procedure is that you start with the IDDSI Flow Test. And if we've got, after 10 seconds of flow, if there's 10 mils still remaining, or if you've got 1 or 2 drips there, then we move across and use the IDDSI Fork Drip Test. And we work out, based on the pictures and the descriptions, which category it falls into. And if it doesn't fit into either category, it literally means that it has no classification. It's either neither a level 3 or neither a level 4, and it will either need to be thinned out or thickened to move into one of those thickness levels. IDDSI on the website has developed some audit tools, and what you'll see there, if you go to the website, are a range of them. The one for liquids here provides you with some suggestions, some things to think about. So we've got some critical things to think about. They need to be smooth liquids with no bits. And when I say no bits, that even moves through to making sure that if you've thickened it with a powder or a liquid thickening agent, that it's been well incorporated. So if you've got any little lumps of thickener that haven't been well incorporated, then that's a problem. That in fact poses a choking risk. So you're looking to make sure that it meets what you're looking for at the time of service, perhaps 15 minutes after service if you think there's going to be a delay. You may find after 30 minutes that it has changed, particularly if it's a hot liquid that's cooled down, then it may no longer be in spec. So these are all things to think about. The fork test is used for level 3 only, and we've got the critical element is that it drips slowly and dollops through the prongs of a dinner fork. It's a nice to have but not a need to have for the fork to leave clear patterns on the surface of the liquid there. We were asked also last time about how we measure the thickness of carbonated thick drinks. Now, the IDDSI Flow Test, so using the syringe, we can use it for carbonated thick drinks. If there are so many bubbles in the liquid, in the thick liquid, that it won't flow through the syringe, it may in fact be within that level 3-4 gap, so it may not have a classification, for example. Carbonation has quite a unique therapeutic effect. So for any clinicians, thin carbonated drinks, I will correct that, is as effective as thickened liquids in treating aspiration. So the bubble structure within those carbonated drinks activates nociceptors within the oral cavity that is particularly good at activating the sensation within the mouth and also within the pharynx as well to generate a faster swallow reflex. And it tends to leave less residue there as well. So what that might mean is that the degree of thickness that you need for a carbonated drink may in fact be different to uncarbonated drinks, and you need a clinical assessment there. I think we've still got some people who've not got their things muted at the moment. The other one that I'm asked about is measuring the thickness of nutritional supplements. Now, nutritional supplements are often classified as complex fluids. They're often quite difficult to thicken. They seem to take quite a long time, and they may have some tiny gritty or grainy particles that as they try to flow through the syringe all kind of come together and cause a bit of a traffic jam at the syringe nozzle, resulting in a slow flow. It may in fact be that those gritty or grainy bits can be felt in the mouth on tasting, so we need clinician judgment to see if they're actually going to be suitable for patients. The other thing to bear in mind here is that rheometers are also unable to cope with those bitty, pithy or incompletely mixed liquids. So this isn't just a problem for the flow test, it's actually also a problem for rheometers as well, and it tells you that the liquid has not been, is not a homogeneous liquid. And you need to work out whether or not it's in fact suitable for someone with swallowing difficulties. So moving over to look at our pureed extremely thick. Again, just a reminder of those descriptive characteristics, and I particularly want to focus on the fact that it doesn't require chewing and that we shouldn't need any controlled manipulation of the bolus. So we know, for example, that sticky foods are problematic, and the way that we check this is with the IDDSI spoon tilt test. So you take a spoonful of what you think might be suitable, like a mousse, or even the top one is a Greek yogurt here. Turn the spoon on its side and you can give it a flick of the wrist, and you should find that it comes off relatively easily. There may be a small amount of residue on the spoon. You should still be able to see the spoon through any residue that's there. The bottom image clearly shows a substance that is too thick. So we've got something, peanut butter in fact, there that's simply too thick, and you can see a lot of residue left there. So it should be able to hold together on the spoon, hold its shape, but not be sticky. This one is a demonstration of the spoon tilt test with a pureed pizza. So the base is a polenta, and the topping is pureed olives, pureed tomato, and a Parmesan cheese as opposed to a mozzarella cheese. And you'll notice that the bolus holds together and comes off cleanly. So our testing then for our pureed extremely thick is making sure that it will sit in a pile above the fork. If it's collapsing over the edges of the fork, that's not good either. And then secondly, moving over to the spoon tilt test. So holding its shape on the spoon, not too firm and sticky, with little left on the spoon after you've flicked it. Again, we've got some audit tools available on the IDDSI website. We've got one for extremely thick here. Again, anything with a star on it are critical things. And then we've also got the puree. And this is where it is on the IDDSI website. So I have got a note down the bottom here that the puree needs to be able to be put in the mouth and swallowed whole. No chewing and no bolus formation skills should be needed to eat this consistency. If you can pick the sample up in your hands and could bite a piece of it, so if it's a moulded puree that you can bite a piece of, it's not in fact a puree, it's a soft solid, and it poses a choking risk for people who do in fact need a puree. So this is a video that IDDSI have been able to use with permission from the people who developed the dynamic swallow, and I'm using this to demonstrate why it is people might need pureed food. So this person has difficulty with chewing and with bolus manipulation. As I play that again, he tips his head back to move it back into his throat. There's no chewing that's gone on there at all. It is sitting in a lump and now been taken into the airway. So when you're looking at moulded purees and you want to check that they're okay, they are beautiful, they look great. There are a couple of things we just need to make sure that they meet these requirements so that they're not a choking risk. So with the fork drip test, we don't want them to be too runny. With the spoon tilt test, they shouldn't be too sticky. And with the fork pressure test, they shouldn't be too firm. So a reminder, no biting or chewing, and any food that requires chewing or controlled manipulation or bolus formation is not suitable. So you can test that yourself by taking a spoonful and putting it in your mouth. And if your first instinct is to chew it, then it's not suitable. This is a video example showing the fork pressure test. It's probably a little too sticky, however, this particular one, looking at the carrot here. So from a fork pressure point of view, it's okay, but probably a little too sticky. Just as a reminder that we are continually updating the IDDSI app, and there will be videos and other things that are available on there, and it's free both on the iOS and the Android platforms. We'll take some questions now. I'll stop sharing the screen here. But if you find you've got questions later, or if you'd like to join the IDDSI mailing list, please email me at australia@idsi.org. All right, Troy, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, well, does anybody have any questions for Julie? Thank you, Julie, for that presentation. Very interesting. Anybody have any questions? Julie, I think you said you had some inquiries or questions, do you?
So I had a question about the fork drip test. So one of the questions that had come through was how you do it. So you put the fork in and dredge it up and look at flow. So I've got a comment here. The pureed pizza sample didn't really look pureed. I agree. So from a visual point of view, it doesn't look pureed, but in fact, when you put that in your mouth, it is in fact pureed, and it tasted delicious.
And Julie, there's another question that's just popped up about dollop custard.
Yep. So dollop custard fall under level 4. It might hold its shape on the spoon, may not drip through the prongs of a fork. So if it's going to hold its shape on the spoon and it doesn't fall through the prongs of the fork, those two elements are fine. You just need to make sure that it's not too sticky. So doing the spoon tilt test.
And the rest of the question then come from Alex, Julie, about standardisation or...
All right. So standardising what slowly means. So we haven't specified sort of per 10 seconds. I guess, Alex, as you lift it up, if you're not able to, you wouldn't be able to eat a moderately thick liquid with a fork because it's going to be continually dripping through and dolloping through the prongs of the fork. You might get small amounts on there, but it's certainly not something that you're going to be able to eat with a fork. Certainly. I can see also what volume of fluid should be on the fork. We found a difference of millilitres makes a difference whether it drips or dollops. Absolutely. So we have looked at a couple of different methods recently. So we've looked at, I know that my colleague Peter Lamb, for example, has taken a spoonful, as in a teaspoonful, and dropped it through the prongs of the fork. And that, yes, you will get a difference depending on whether you do that versus whether you dredge it up. In talking to Dr. Ben Hansen about the two methods, and then also going back to our physiologic rationale for why we do things, taking a 5 ml bolus is probably not really representative of what you take by way of a mouthful, which is closer to 20 mils. However, Ben, in looking at the different methods, felt that the dredging method was a more scientific method. I'm wondering whether some food services may require more efficient pureeing equipment. I think that's a really valid comment there as well. So again, answered some questions recently from overseas where they've talked about actually using something like a coffee grinder that will take things down to a very small bit or crumb, if you like, for if it's a dry substance that you might then hydrate, for example, before adding it to something else. The other thing would be to look at sieving to make sure that there are no bits in there either. I had the flow test. Had the flow test been tried with barium? Yes, they have. So with an unthinned barium, so barium is in itself, you're quite right, designed to coat the inside of the mucosa. From a speech pathology point of view, most often what we do there is we thin it out with water because otherwise it is in fact too thick. So I know that Katrina Steele has published some information about use with barium, and we have that information up on the IDDSI website, particularly with Veribar up there. Had a comment, the pureed pizza had no sauce. Yes, you're right, and yes, it should have a sauce, so thank you for picking that up. And we have another question here. At the beginning of the presentation, that mousses would be an example of level 4, but a thick mousse, not the airy fluffy kind, but more like a soft cheesecake kind, would be texturally quite different to a dollop custard. Would the mousse or cheesecake be a level 5? So if you've got a cheesecake, it's in fact possible that that it could in fact even be a level 6. So we're looking at particle size, and also whether you're needing to, if you can push the fork down through there. So yeah, level 5 if you don't need, if it doesn't blanch your thumbnail to white. There are some cheesecakes that you actually need a fair amount of pressure. So that may in fact even be a level 6 there. So I'm thinking of the fluffy, airy kind of mousse is what I was thinking of when I was initially describing at the beginning there, a mousse that might be suitable for level 4. And we'll talk more about level 5 versus level 6 in our next webinar. Also needing to make sure that the spoon tilt test criteria has been met.
Julie, I'm assuming there's resources. I haven't looked. You will most likely know off the top of your head. There's a raft of resources about this on the IDDSI webpage. Is that correct for these levels and explanations and examples of them?
That's right, Troy. So we've got the IDDSI framework document, and then we've also got the audit tools up there as well.
Excellent, excellent. And that's the audit tool that you were just referring to a moment ago, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, cool. Are there any other questions? Or actually, this one that's just popped up.
So the question, yeah, in the pizza example, it seemed like there were different textures, multiple textures allowed in level 4. So each of the textures on there were smooth. That's right. So there were a range of textures on that pureed pizza. And as the person previously said, yes, a sauce to make sure that it's nice and moist is also helpful there. So yes, they are, so long as it meets all of those other requirements.
If there's nothing else, Julie, do you have any other final words?
I haven't got anything else to add other than to say thanks again, Troy.
Yes, I appreciate you doing this, Julie. So thank you. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you in a month's time at IDDSI webinar number 4.